Hello, everyone. Welcome to the newest features of Dynamics 365. Newest features of Dynamics 365 you're not using. I am your presenter here from Encore Business Solutions. My name is Young-Ha Kim. I've been working with Dynamics 365 since CRM Online or CRM 2016, which kind of correlates to version 8.0. Although I might not have as much experience with some of the older features like 2015 and CRM version 3.0 and 3.4, one of my roles here at Encore is to really dive deep into the newest features that Microsoft releases in the upcoming updates. And so don't be alarmed by my small number of years I've been working with CRM. My main focus here is working on the newest features of Dynamics 365, and hopefully you get a lot of new features that you can add on to your company or your organization when you get back to your work. So here's the agenda that we'll be going over today in terms of the newest features. The first feature we'll be going over is the editable grids. And then we'll transition into the multi-select option sets, as well as the business process flow enhancements, and we'll take a brief look at Dynamics 365 app for Outlook for the mobile functionality. And another add-on is not really a new feature, but I think it's a very neat feature that you can bring into your Dynamics 365 environment is what we call the not in advanced find query. This feature allows you to query a lot records with one domain relationship that does not have a record that's associated to it. I find it very useful, and it's completely free to you and your users. And then we'll wrap this session up in a Q&A session. The main objectives, hopefully, that you take away from this seminar or session is to get you and your users excited about some of the new features and the new versions that's coming out for Dynamics 365. I don't know if any of you are on the latest version of 9.0, but the latest versions from 8.0 to 8.1, 8.2 has drastically increased functionality, and the newest features make it a lot easier for your users to make big changes in your organizations without investing a lot of development or customizations in your environment. And that's one of the things that I found very exciting about working with these features or working with the latest versions is that for someone like me who does not have a very big technical background, I was able to go in and make a lot of users and a lot of our clients' lives easier with Dynamics without having to invest having an overhaul in development. A lot of these new features I came out with Dynamics, Microsoft target or objective was to resolve some of the pain points that came with the old versions. I'll tell you from experience, my biggest pain point that I ran into working with Dynamics was the multi-select option sets. That was one of the newest requested features that came out in version 9.0, and for me, it seems silly that you wouldn't, from a technical perspective, you won't be able to add or apply multiple options for a specific record in Dynamics. So I'll go a little bit deeper into that. But when I first started working with Dynamics, I thought it was a little silly, from my perspective, that you weren't able to do that without having to do custom development. The next objective I hope to take away from this is these newest features are supposed to be very simple and easy. It doesn't require a consultant to work on it for 12 hours, something like that. Any subject matter expert within your organization that has basic configuration or functional expertise in Dynamics should be able to turn this on or make quick modifications to quickly improve your business processes in your organization and also see immediate value within your users. And the best part about all these features is that it requires no code. So all all of the newest features I'll be going over, especially even the add-on, will help you and your users increase your experience with Dynamics, your UI experience. It looks very sleek, very smooth, and it's all without code. So it's, from my perspective, I see it as a win-win situation. So we'll dive into the first new feature that came out with Dynamics. It's called the editable grid. Some of the prerequisites that you need to enable this feature is that you must be on Dynamics CRM 2016 8.2 or higher version. It was rebranded to Dynamics 365 once they went to 9.0. And this feature will definitely apply to everyday users that modifies data or any records in Dynamics. So any users have updating accounts or contacts at a bulk perspective, hopefully you'll be able to turn this on for a lot of those users and make their lives a little bit easier. One of the pain points that I believe that this should address if you turn this feature on is that previously you have to open every record to edit the values on that record. So for example, if you had an account view or you queried an account, in order to edit any of the information such as the address or primary contact, account type, or things like that, you have to open up a new record or a new window in your user UI to edit that information. Although it sounds silly when I say it out loud, or even when I was getting ready for this presentation, I noticed that the editable grid, drastically improved my the ease of editing data without having to do an import file or a data migration or even a bulk edit. And it saves a lot of users many clicks within your Dynamics environment. I think I worked with CRM 2011 a while ago, and in order to, I would have to edit, tens of accounts, and I would have hundreds of windows open just to see which account I'm editing, and it took a lot of time. It was very tedious, but with the editable grid, you're able to edit multiple accounts or contacts at once without leaving the web browser or the same window that you have open. Previously, the other options to edit multiple accounts at once or multiple records at once is using the Excel online import perspective, and what that would do is take you to an Excel spreadsheet, edit your values, and then you'd save it. It's called Save to Dynamics. That actually does an import file into your environment, which is great if you're editing just static values. However, any lookup values that reference a different record, you did run into a lot of duplicate errors just because of the CRM import wizard is not powerful enough to look at the underlying GUIDs of the record. And so this new editable feature will allow you to do that without worrying about the technical aspects of the data infrastructure or the data GUIDs for that. Similar pain point here with advanced find. You can do a bulk edit if you do a query on any of the entities and look at a record, but that only limits you to changing to the same value for every record. The editable grid allows you to change different values for different records all in one spot. So here's a little screenshot of what the editable grid looks like from a user perspective. I'll dive into a little bit of a demo after this, but you can see right off the bat the biggest notice that you'll see between the editable grid and the read-only view is that the lookup values were previously hyperlinks. So if you hovered over any of the record or values, it would be a link to the next record, and that is removed from the editable grid view. The next thing you'll notice is that there are little labels next to some of the values in terms of what you can and can't edit. The red dot indicates that it's a required field, so if you're editing this value for for example, VentureWorks, you wouldn't be able to save the record or navigate away from the selected record without having any value in there. There are some limitations with the editable grid. I'll go into that at the end of this session in terms of a gotcha. But for now, you'll see that there's some padlocks on some of these fields. That just means that these fields can't get edited within the editable grid view. The next screenshot here is the subgrid view. So the editable grid is not only limited to the main entity views of that record, you can also allow it or enable it for a subgrid. I believe some of you may have ran into this if you've used the opportunity product and the invoice product views in the past. Those views were the first kind of introduction to the editable grids. And the subgrid view here is very similar to that. So if you're comfortable with using that functionality, you'll see that available to you in your arsenal when you enable this feature. To give you a little walkthrough of what it looks like from a user perspective, here is my active accounts view in my environment. And right off the bat, you'll see this new bar when you have a new toolbar available to you when you enable this feature. It's the show as. So you can toggle between the read-only grid and the editable grid view. And so if I turn back, this is what I meant by the hyperlink for this feature. So if I click on the link for a primary contact, that will take me directly to that primary contact or that contact record. However, if I switch this back to the editable grid, you lose that functionality, which is one of the limitations, but I find it it's a small limitation for me. So as I mentioned, all you have to do to edit any of the values within the editable grid is just click on the field, and you'll see that there's it's basically highlighted. It kind of reminds me of the Excel spreadsheet, except you just modify it exactly right in the middle. So let's say I'm in Houston, and then on the upper left, on the bottom left corner, you'll see that it's labeled as unsaved changes. And if I navigate to a different record, you see that it'll update it to saving. And so that's it's pretty simple. Your users, if they've never worked with the previous versions of editing the record by double-clicking and opening the account, they really won't see the difference between the two views. However, for those of you who have dealt with this pain before, it's very nice to go navigate through different records to update different cities or account types or addresses, other highlighted account information for different records at a time. As I mentioned before, that you do have the option to edit it within the subgrid as well. And within the subgrid, it's the same functionality. And you'll see here that the recommended feature for the field properties also gets displayed, same with the required field for that functionality as well. Unfortunately, one of the features you lose in the subgrid view is to toggle between the read-only and the editable grid. You lose that functionality in toolbar. However, if you use the ribbon if you're familiar with the ribbon workplace bench bar in the XRM toolbox, you can enable that back on for this feature, for this functionality. If I go back to the main view here, another nice feature of the editable grid is the grouping. So on top of the filter options that you have to per column, you also have the option to group it by whatever column you have set up your view. So for example, let me say that I want to see accounts broken down by states, and you'll see that it'll automatically update to the different values you have within your account. And this is an easy way if you're going to do quick query search, quick, just out of curiosity, or you want it broken down, you certainly have that option to do so. For these purposes, you can see I have a small sample size of the accounts, but for an organization that has hundreds of records, this can be a very nice feature to see broken down into whatever column that you wish to pick. So it's more like a chart in a view, if you put it that way. Some of the limitations with this editable view, as I mentioned earlier, is that you won't be able to edit some of the padlocks, and the padlocks are specific to certain fields. So within the editable grid view, if you add the column to any composite field, so that's the address field, or from the account record, it would be the first name of the full name field. So any composite that's out of the box, you will not be able to edit that information as you're it's still locked. The other field or information that you won't be able to edit is any other field that doesn't lie directly on the entity of that view. So, for example, the reason why this email field is stuck in a locked state is because it's the primary contact email is from the linked primary contact record. Unfortunately, the view setup, you have access to see the other information, but in terms of editing, you'll have to go into that primary contact record to change the values. Speaking of the primary contact, this is one of those unique items that takes a little bit of an additional configuration within the editable grid. Is if you bring any lookup field as a column on your view, you have to do additional setup to enable the lookup value. So if I wanted to change the lookup, you have that functionality of the available lookup values. However, I did have to set that up within my solution in your customize the solution or customize the system aspect of the editable grids. And don't worry I won't go deeper into how that's set up. I do have that broken down in my slides that we will send out to you after the seminar. So I have screenshots and a step-by-step process of how to enable the lookup on the editable grid, as well as setting a default for specific views and specific users. So here's some of the limitations or gotchas that are tied to the editable grids. I believe I touched on most of these information, or most of these bullet points. One of the things I didn't get a chance to show you was the customer field. So out of the box in Dynamics, there are certain customer fields that allow you to look up to both accounts and contacts. And because that's a one-to-many lookup to two different entities, you will not be able to edit that field as within the editable grid view. And one other gotcha is that when you enable this feature per entity, you cannot select what views that you want to enable the editable functionality to, or limit that. So it's really an all or nothing approach. However you use this, as I showed you, can still toggle back and forth between the read-only and the editable functionality. Is there any questions regarding quick questions regarding the editable views before I move on to the next newest feature? Okay. The next new feature I'll be going into is the multi-select option set. As I mentioned earlier, this was one of my highest requested features that I've heard, as well as a big advocate for your user experience. It is only available to you if you're on Dynamics version 9.0 or higher. And some of the features that it benefits or beneficial for is definitely for all users entering data, similar to the same user group that was for the editable grids, but also it's very beneficial for you as an organization because it gives you an option to have a better client profile or a better data structure or a data matrix for all your records and how you want to use this option accordingly. Some of the biggest use cases I've seen is the industry perspective for an account or a contact. Previously, if you wanted to apply more than one industry, whether that's accounting and professional services, you had to create multiple fields to capture that information, or you had to invest some development work into, or JavaScript into the form to allow that functionality. And as a company that specializes in multiple products, as with our clients, we don't want to be just specialized in one aspect. We want to make sure that we can handle a lot of different industries, right? And with Dynamics 365, you have that functionality with the multi-select option sets. It's very slick. Some of your users will, similar to the previous feature, if they've never worked with any versions prior to 9.0, they won't really see a difference. It's more of one of those, common sense things like we have in our diagram, the upper right corner. It's definitely, I've made this face multiple times when I started working with Dynamics, I felt like it was something that should have came out of the box or available to you. Unfortunately, it wasn't available to you until version 9.0. And again, the cherry on the cake here is that you don't need any code or any custom developers to help you with this feature. So let's go back to my environment here, and the multi-select option sets, it gets displayed like any other field. So I've created a custom field here for account type, and if I click on the values, you'll see that every value is displayed in a small text box with an X next to it. If you want to add more values, you can start typing what you want to type for the option set that you want to apply to this record. So I think vendor is one of the options. So if I start typing vendor, it'll display all the options available to you with that. If you want to see all of the options available to you, you can click this arrow bar, and it'll just show you all the options that you can select from. It'll show the checked box for this option shows you that's what's already applied. And it's as simple as clicking a checkbox for the rest of the records. This is what it looks like for if you're on an account or any other type of record perspective on the form. If you wanted to look at what it looks like for the in a view perspective, you can see that it's separated by a semicolon within the account type column, and it gets broken down as such. Using the editable grid, you still have that same functionality. It's the same as you would on the form, which is also very nice. You don't have to worry about having a different experience for your users who's entering all this information. Very sleek, and I find it very easy to use as well. One of the setbacks that I found with the multi-select option set is how you can query or search or filter down within your data set. And what I mean by that is within Advanced Find, you would query your related records as much as however you'd like. And the simple query I have here is I want to look at all accounts that have account type either customer and vendor. And so if I kept it together in one line, it will only show me records that have customer and vendor as the account type. Previously, if we had kept this filter with just a regular option set, it would show you all accounts that had either customer or vendor. So that's a quick change here with how you want to approach the option sets. If you want to break it up into an or functionality, you do have to enter a second line to look at the combination of the two. So let me do a quick or change here, and you can see that will show you just the vendor. If I go back to the main view, what is actually a little counterintuitive is that if you want to filter down per account type on the view, it will also do a or functionality as well. So if I just select customer, it'll show me all accounts that have the customer as the account type. However, if I select a separate field in terms of a vendor, it'll show me all accounts that have either customer or vendor. So it is a little counterintuitive because in the advanced find, when you included both of these options, it gave you an and. However, if you did it within the view, it gives you an or. So you can see here for City and Power Light account, it only has the vendor, but it got displayed in this query here. It's very simple. For me, it was still kind of mind-boggling that it took Microsoft to 9.0 to release this feature. However, it is ready for you if you are on version 9.0, and it's one of the what I find very useful for your organization, helping you again with client profiling, or it gives you a lot more flexibility into what different types of products they may have or services that they may have. You have that option for any entity you create this field for. One thing that does that I do explain later in my slides when you get it is that you have one of the field properties or field type when you create the field is actually called a multi-select option set. So you can't turn a already created option set field into a multi-select. It has to be created as a multi-select option set field. But you can use any of the global option sets available to you when you create that field. Some of the gotchas here is the multi-select option set field can only have up to 150 options. That's the same as if you create any other global option set in your environment. It seems a little big, pretty large to me, so it should meet all of your needs. And again, be warmed with the query functionality within the advanced find and within the view. Any questions regarding the multi-select option sets before we move on? Okay. So here's what it looks like within just the user perspective, and then the differences between the advanced find and the view. The next feature we'll be diving into is the business process flow enhancements. Again, this is only applied to you if you're on version 9.0 or higher. And this quick enhancement or quick configuration setup will be beneficial for all users using any type of business process flow, not just limited to sales. It is I would say it is the most common in sales if you use the out-of-the-box lead to opportunity process or the opportunity sales process. And the add-on that I'll be specifically talking about is triggering a workflow, whether that's you're entering or exiting a specific stage. So I'll go into the demo once I get later on the slides, but to give you a little idea, one of the biggest requests that I've gotten is, if we are moving this sale through different stages, I want to make sure that people have proper ownership and that we don't have to worry about emailing other people to let them know that, hey, this opportunity or this record is now in your hands. It's an easy handoff, and I think it doesn't take that much to set up, and it should be an easy win for you and your team. It's very smooth and very user-friendly. As I mentioned, just briefly touched on, I believe it's best used for when you're using a handoff scenario. So if your sales process touches multiple departments, it can be a lot of overhead to try to manage each record. So in a classic sales case, we have a proposal or we have a develop phase and then a proposal phase and then a close phase within the business process flow, and that may hit initially starts off with the sales team, maybe it goes to the contracting team, or if it gets contracted out, like who owns that sale and that record. And so that can be a workflow can be triggered whether that you enter or exit that specific stage. And instead of creating an email to let them know, we can also trigger the email within the workflow that you have set up. And it's just to get them a heads up that, hey, this is this opportunity or this record is now ready for you. You now own this. And with the easy handoff, if we use a scenario, for example, when we assign the new owners, we can also use a dashboard or a view or a query perspective for individual users that gets automatically populated with a lot of these records. And so the flexibility and your functionality you can introduce that can meet your business needs is very large, and hopefully you can take this on and turn this and add this feature to your organization. So a classic scenario that I mentioned is just kind of the handoff stage for your opportunity. And what I've done is that I want to show you all that if you want to transfer the account to or the opportunity to somebody else, you certainly have that functionality when you trigger this workflow. The scenario I'll be going over here is from if you leave the develop stage of this opportunity, I want to assign the opportunity of this owner to the owner of the account. And so let me just double check that this is going to be a different user. So I've already built my workflow and added it onto this business process flow enhancement. And so you notice that I am the owner for this opportunity. However, the account owner is the business application platform, so a different user. And so if I were able to move on to the proposed stage, so within the business process flow, you'll see that with a quick refresh, it'll recognize that this owner is not the same as the account owner, and so that workflow will get triggered, and that owner will be updated to the owner of the account. Oops. Sorry about that. So let's try that again. Do a quick refresh. And you can see here that now the owner has been changed to the proper owner that was on the account. And again, the handoff scenario is very simple. It's pretty straightforward. Your business needs may not be as simple as this, but if your objective is to have proper ownership of your sales or proper ownership of any type of records, you have that functionality whenever you've enabled this business process flow enhancement. One of the limitations that come with this enhancement is that the trigger point for the opportunity or for the workflow is whether it's going to be stage entry or stage exit. So within every business process flow, you have a stage depicting where that is in the process. How you can't add any more functionality to that in terms of a trigger point. And so when you create your workflow, it might be counterintuitive to set up a trigger for the workflow and a trigger for the the business process flow. However, just keep in mind that when you create the workflow to do whatever action that you would like it to do, the trigger will be at 2 points. So you only have to worry about the stage entry or stage exit to trigger that workflow. Another gotcha is that if the desired action or desired functionality you want is a little bit more complex, you do have to set up that workflow in advance. So I've created my workflow to assign that opportunity record to a different owner. That's one of the functionalities. The other things that comes at your arsenal is that you can trigger emails, create new tasks, create new records. All of the functionality you have within creating a workflow you have, it's just this is triggered based on a stage entry or exit. The other limitation is that when you go back to a stage in the opportunity, that is considered a stage entry. So for example, if in that scenario where the proposed was the next process after the develop, if I went back to the develop stage from the proposed, that would be count as a develop stage entry. And so that's something to keep in mind, that some of your processes may not always be linear progression. It could be a linear regression that still counts as the same trigger or same action for the business process flow enhancement. Any questions for what's capable, what's available to you with the business process flow enhancement? Okay. The next feature we'll be looking at is the Dynamics, or enabling the Dynamics 365 app for Outlook for your mobile users. Previously, I don't know if many of you have used the Outlook add-in or the add-on to your desktop Outlook. It gave you the functionality to track email records, track activities, track any contacts, appointments and such from your Outlook calendar or Outlook desktop to your Dynamics 365 environment. One of the biggest limitations was that it was never readily on the go for you for those people that use phones or tablets for different sales meetings or different appointments and such like that. However, with this new app, you have that functionality available to you on the phone. There are some limitations or system requirements that does need to be that you do need to be on in order to make this work. The biggest thing is that you have to be on Exchange Online and you have to be on Dynamics 365 Online. Anything of a hybrid or on-premise perspective, you will not be able to have the mobile functionality. You can still use the app for Outlook for if you do have a hybrid. However, in order to get the mobile tracking to track emails from your phone, you do have to be on the Exchange and Dynamics 365 Online. With that, there are some mobile system requirements as well. It's only available to you on iOS and Android, or iPhone and Android, either on iOS 8 or higher, or any of the versions listed for the Android. Myself, I'm an iPhone user, so I found it very easy. I downloaded the Microsoft Outlook app on my phone, and whenever it's connected to your mailbox, you have that track functionality. And I use it quite daily, to be honest. Whenever I get an email that I need other users accessing the record to see, it's very simple. So why you need to deploy the Dynamics 365 app for Outlook is that I've heard it from a lot of clients that they lose data or they lose activities within a client management or a client profiling or any sales opportunity you have within your system, and that's valuable data. Any interaction you have, any conversation you have via email, or any appointments you have. A lot of the sales teams, I think, is more approach this as a one-off approach that they're the owner of the sale or the conversation with the client. However, if you're in an organization that has multiple people touching the sale or talking to the client, then they need to know all the information that's been going on. So from the first direct touch point all the way to the end of the sale, if you use the track functionality within your mobile app, you can any users accessing that record, whether in Dynamics or on the phone, can see all that information right on the go. Previously, if you didn't take your computer with you anywhere you went for the sales, you wouldn't be able to have that information. A lot of users just take notes and then take a picture and then upload it as an attachment. However, anything on the go, your users can take a phone or a tablet to access all that information. As long as you have all your users using the Dynamics 365 app for Outlook, I think it adds tremendous value to your CRM system. All that information I believe is very valuable, especially if you're dealing with clients that's talked to multiple people within your organization. Everybody can stay up to speed on everything that's been conversed and what their client is looking for, or any other inquiries that you have. So for someone like me who provides services to a client, I want to see everything that's been talked about. Maybe they had a conversation about a specific add-on or a specific feature or something that they are really interested in. I can see that for myself without having to go to the salesperson and talk for 30 minutes to figure out what's going on. So again, it's an increase in data cleanliness and also an increase in data functionality and your client management and customer relationship management for your dynamic environment. Unfortunately, I was not able to set up a hands-on demo for my phone to our environment. However, these are screenshots I have from my phone that I've used in previous environments. You can see when you get the email, all you have to do is tap on the ellipses next to that came under the email, and then this Dynamics 365 button will pop up. And when you tap that, you can track any email to any record. It gets recommended to you based on the email that you received it from. However, you can also search for different records if they don't exist in your Dynamics environment, create new records if it's a new person that you're interacting with. If it's a new account, you can certainly do that as well. You can track it with any opportunity. You have all that functionality with you on the phone, and it's for your users. I think it's a very valuable tool for you to get all that information. And we always say you get what you put in terms of your end result. And as long as your users are using the tracking functionality, there should be no lapse in conversation or a loss of data within your environment. Here are some of the limitations with this feature. However, I cannot stress this enough. If you want the mobile functionality, you have to be Dynamics 365 online and also Exchange Online for your organization. However, as I mentioned, you can use the desktop functionality if you're a hybrid, but if you want it to be on the go, you do have to be online for both D365 and Exchange. Also, you do have to download the Microsoft Outlook app, so it doesn't come with you with the mail app that came default with your phone. You do have to download the Outlook app, and if it's enabled for you, there's no additional setup. It's just ready for you to track and ready to go. Some of the things I didn't go into for this presentation purposes, but it is broken down in my slides, is that you do have to enable the Outlook security role as a privilege, and also earlier versions of 9.0, it was stuck in preview mode, so you do have to enable that. However, it goes deeper into the setup and the configuration perspective later in these slides, which will be handed out to you after this presentation. Well, any questions before we move on to the new add-on? Okay. Finally, this is a new add-on. I hope that your users will love. I know for sure I loved it when I found out that this was available to me. It is a third-party add-on from Cobalt. It's called the Not In query. The prerequisites can apply to CRM from 2013 and on, whether that's on-premise or online. And this query definitely allows you to look at all records that doesn't have a specific link associated to it. So one of the use cases that I've seen is, I want to see all accounts that doesn't have any leads within our system. If you use the out-of-box leads entity, it's like, how long have we had this account and why haven't we been making any sales to them, right? We want to make sure that all the accounts or all the data in our environment is getting touched on for all of our services, our products, or anything like that. It's more of a better client profiling tool than anything in your Dynamics environment. Previously, without this tool, the only way you get this type of query is you have to look at all of the leads available to you and search, if there's any leads for a specific account as a one-off. So you have to check every account one by one, and you can see how that can get very tedious and for if anyone wants to do it, especially if you had over hundreds of accounts, right? So you would have someone or a system look at, do that query for all those accounts to see the not in query. So here's the link. It is available to you. You just sign up with your email, and then the solution will be sent to you in a zip file, and you import it within your solution. So let me dive into what that looks like for you in Advanced Find. So a view that I created was show me one scenario I showed in that slide was I want to see all accounts that does not have any cases, right? And so I want to look for accounts, and you for your query you scroll down to the cases that's linked by the customer. And when you enable or install that solution, you have this new feature that's next to you, whether that does not contain data or contains data. So the not in query specifically relies for the does not contain data, and it just looks for all accounts that doesn't have any records. That's the associated record in the query. And so if I click results, you can see that I only have one account, the A-Data Incorporation, that doesn't have any cases applied to them. And so as a use case scenario, I want to look into this account further and say, like, are we sure that they don't have any cases? That's great for us. Maybe they don't have any support cases for us. So let's look at not contain data results. There we go. So that's add-on. Again, you can filter that on for multiple entities that's related. The other one I showed you was about the leads. If you want to see all accounts that doesn't have any leads tied to that. And again, this does get broken down into the other options that's available to you in my slides. There's multiple use case scenarios that you can use. However, I find that if we use it in-house, the marketing team really loves this tool a lot because they use Advanced Find to figure out, who doesn't have any type of records associated to them. Previously, you would need to get a big SSRS report or multiple reports overall to get to the data. That I think that should be very simple. The only gotcha I found with this solution is that it only works for advanced find views. It does not get brought to your system view within your solutions. If you want to share this view with all of your other users, you have to enable and share it to all your other users within the advanced find saved views perspective. But I believe that is a valid workaround. It's not as smooth, but you can share it to all of your other users if you want to make it a system view. So I open this up for questions for not just the Cobalt not in functionality, but any questions regarding any other functionality that we went over in the features, etc. Okay, thank you for coming to the seminar. If you could please fill out the survey that was handed out to you, and I'll stick around for a couple more minutes if you have additional questions or things like that. But if not, I hope you have a great rest of your day and enjoy the rest of the conference here.